Yes, guys, I'm Si from Ace Podcast Nation. This is Cardiff City World. Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. Today, little video, because I'm away, I'm having a little break for a couple of days, which is well overdue. But a little video I thought I'd put out this week. I've been talking about it for a while, but just wanted to have a look at, really, is Erol Bulut cooking up an alternative formation, or is he looking at a kind of second formation? Is he looking at a change in formation? I don't think it's a change in formation, because I think we would have seen it more in pre-season if that's the case. We've definitely seen a change in shape in possession, but today we're talking more in terms of the general setup, the general formation, which is becoming less and less important in day-to-day in football and things like that these days, because teams change so drastically in possession and out of possession. So it's kind of interesting to me. But I'm looking at the squad, I'm looking at the players he's bringing in, looking at the players who he seems to favour and he likes, and I'm just wondering whether he's cooking up a slightly different formation. And we're going to talk about it a little bit, hypothesise as it were. But when Erol Bulut was at ACEnetworkcontact, which he got to a Turkish Cup final, he got him into the Europa League. The team was largely built on what we saw last year at Cardiff. Really solid defensively structure, but an aggressive press. However, I hear you say, but second half of the season, Cardiff didn't press. So yes, and this is one of the very similarities that we have at Cardiff in the second half of last year, his time at Fenerbahce, and a little bit at ACEnetworkcontact as well. So at ACEnetworkcontact, he was built on being defensively structured, pretty good at keeping hold of the ball in the deeper areas, but not being too concerned if the opponents have the ball elsewhere, and then trying to break them down in the transition and create chances in those transitions, and kind of getting in behind, getting teams on the break. And in many ways that was really successful for Erol Bulut. Like in the Fenerbahce, largely he's considered as if he failed, but actually his win percentage is pretty good. He finished third, which is why he's considered a failure, because in Turkey, if you're at Fenerbahce or you're at Galatasaray, you're expected to win the league. So finishing third is not acceptable. But actually, he managed third without being backed. He had asked for a couple of players from ACEnetworkcontact, which they turned down. They then went to their Fenerbahce's rivals, and the rivals won the league. And I think that points to one thing in particular straight away, is if you back him and give him the players that he wants to utilise in the way he wants to play, he will be successful. One of the things that struck me really early on last year, at the start of the season, we had a tough start, Leeds and Leicester and these teams. We did really well, we set up really well, but what impressed me the most was how tactically astute he was in those early games. Little tweaks, little changes to tactics, shape, personnel, depending on the opponent. And that was so encouraging. I was really excited by it. And then the Ramsey injury changes things. We lose a lot of creativity. Then Mark McGuinness's injury drastically changes things from playing out the back, and it becomes very sideways, backwards. We never looked the same from a pressing point of view that we did at the start of the season, when we didn't have the fundamentals in place, almost the spine. We lost McGuinness, we lost Joe Rolls for a period, we lost Ramsey. That's right down the middle of your side. At the same time we lost those players, Siopis struggled because he was trying to do his role and the role of a number 8. Ruben wasn't playing at that point. We tried a few different players in the 10, which didn't really work. We didn't have a striker. It took Phillips. Obviously Phillips came in, and we didn't quite get going with him for a couple of games. And then when he did, he was good. But as I said the other day on a show, Phillips is far too good for the Championship defensively. He's good. He's decent on the ball. All the things that you'd want from a from a player who's going to play Premier League, higher Championship team. But I still argue that Mark McGuinness is better at bringing the ball out and passing through the lines, playing that switch ball, moving the ball quickly into the areas where you can progress up the pitch. And I think if you look at Bulut's time at Fenerbahce and you look at his time before that at ACEnetworkcontact, one thing which sticks out is he will adapt to the players he's got in the squad. So when we lost a few players last year and we didn't get the players he wanted in January, he adapted just to try and win games or to get as many points as possible. And I think that is acceptable in the short term, but not in the long term. And I think that's, it's clear that he's addressing the home performances, the home mentality, by the change in shape in pre-season straight away, where you've got the 5 right across the front. It's like a 5 at the front when we got possession, and then a 3 and a 2 at the back. It's really interesting to see, and I think the players he's brought in, that in possession kind of shape, could cause a lot of teams a lot of problems. And I think we might be the surprise package early doors in this season, because I think teams will expect us to be a bit slow and a bit turgid and go off of last season. But actually, the players that we've brought in will allow us to do things that we weren't able to do last year. Now, in the EFL Cup last year, Erol Bulut in the early rounds played with 3 at the back. Now, I think part of that was because he wanted to give Gutas and McGuinness a rest, so he brought in and played the likes of Jamalu Collins or maybe NG or someone like that in a 3, Romeo, people like this. They were playing as a 3, or in a 3, should I say, sorry. So, but it was clear he quite liked the shape, and it was really funny that in the EFL Cup games, where it's a shadow squad, if you like, of young players and squad players, the 3-5-2 worked really well. It worked really well, in particular for Ruben Colwell. He bagged a good few assists and goals in those couple of early rounds of the EFL, the first couple of games in the EFL Cup. Whenever we've tried that formation briefly in the first team, we've kind of struggled with it. Now, I think we struggled with it because the first team, or the first choice players, didn't really suit it. We had inverted wingers, we had a CDM, but we didn't have a number 8 and things like that. I think it was difficult for us to really get that kind of pattern and get those patterns of play and get that shape to utilise what a 3-5-2 can give you, because a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-1-1, what it gives you is extreme width, which we know he's trying to do from what we've seen in pre-season, but it also gives you a really solid defensive base. Now, particularly if you've got a ball playing centre back in the 3 who can push up alongside your defensive midfielder, so you leave 2 at the back, and you have 2, almost like a 2-2, and then 2 banks of 4. You can have all these different shapes in possession. But I look at some of the players that we've got in the squad that he likes. I look at some of the players that he's brought in, your Callum Chambers. By the time this video comes out, I'm hoping that Alex Robertson will be announced. Hoping, fingers crossed. I believe he does his medical today, but remains to be seen. I look at these, a Kanga, Robinson in form, and then I look at the young fullbacks we've got, and I'm really excited by it. And I just wonder, he liked that 3-5-2 at Fenerbahce at times, he liked it at Alanyaspor, because it offers him defensive stability, but it also offers him width, and you can be really strong in the transition of play in the middle of the park, because you've got 3 in the middle, you've got 2 wingers, you can have 2 strikers at certain points. The wing backs slot in to make a big bank of 4 or 5, and it can be really, really defensively sound, but it can be super, super aggressive in a very short space of time if you've got the right players. So what I wanted to do now is kind of go through a couple of lineups which maybe we could utilize with this kind of system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a kind of a 3-5-2, and then I'll maybe do a 3-5-1-1. But the first one, so say Halworth or Alnwick in goal. Then you could have your back 3. You could have Gutas, We'll say McGuinness, that might change to whoever. But say Gutas, McGuinness, Chambers. Okay, there's your three. Then you have Siopis, Robertson, Rawls as your double pivot. And then in the wing back areas, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Cardiff Dowder, I think, would be the left hand side of that if he's fit. Right hand side, I don't think you can really drop Perry NG, but there is a but. I would argue that a Raheem Conte or a Ronan Pacquiao is perfect for a wing back role. So I'm going to go with Conte in there for the sake of an argument. But you've got a whole range of options. Perry NG could also play in the three if you needed him to. So that's your sort of three, your two midfielders, your wing backs. Got one more midfielder to add in, and then it's whether you go with, so if we go with just a normal 3-5-2, you go Ramsey in the 10, and then you can have Callum Robinson and Kanga. You could have Robertson or you could have Kanga and Willock just off him, or you could have Kanga and El Ghazi just off him. But it gives you this tactical flexibility. You could also go more of a 3-5-1-1 and have almost like two number 10s. So you could have a Ramsey in the 10, but then you could have Colwell playing off Kanga, Robinson, whoever, or a Willock or someone like that. I'm not saying that we're going to play it all the time. I just think he might be building like a bit of flexibility in his back pocket, an alternative formation for, if you're chasing a goal. It's a good formation if you're chasing a goal and there's not much time left. Three at the back, high wing backs, crowd in midfield, two up front. Makes a lot of sense. I think it suits the likes of Callum Chambers. I think it suits Jamali Collins. I think it suits the centre backs. I think it suits Perry NG if you wanted to play him in a three. He could also play right wing back, don't get me wrong. But I think having a young wing back on one of the sides, like a Raheem Conte, would allow for a lot of pace, and then you can have the skill and the guile of a Callum O'Dowda. I think we might see Perry NG when we play the 4-2-3-1 this year. I think we might see Perry NG inverting a bit more if we've got like an Alex Robertson there who's going to get forward and try and dictate play from midfield. I could see Perry NG or maybe Jamali Collins, but less so I think with Collins, because I think Collins can and should get forward to support. I think in certain games where we're being a little less attacking in possession, you might see Perry tuck in, but then you might see him stick to this high fullbacks, 5 across the front, because you've got a Callum Chambers or a Mark McGuinness who can push up into midfield alongside Siopis and have like a 2 and a 2. So you have 2 centre backs, 2 midfielders, 5, and someone just behind and whoever to kind of dictate it. I just think at the start of last season, Erol Bulut showed that he was really tactically astute in the way he tweaked and adjusted for certain teams, certain players. And I just wonder whether we might surprise a few this year with the personnel we've brought in, the quality that we've brought in, but also the way we're going to play in possession, the way we're going to play with maybe an alternative formation for certain scenarios, certain times. I mentioned the other day, I don't see Joe Rawls starting all the time if we bring Robertson in, but there will be games where he will start. There will be games when he's needed at half time because we've got to keep the ball, or we need to be a bit more creative from the deeper areas to get it to your Ramseys and your Colwells and these guy Willocks and guys like this. So you need a squad, you need options, you need, Bulut wants 2 players in each position, but there's no point in just having 22 players who are like for like. You need options. So look at the right hand side, for instance, just kind of very quickly. You could have Ruben Colwell, who's going to drift and go and wing, and then you might have El Ghazi who's going to drift and win, but he'll maybe hug the touchline a little bit more to try and isolate the fullback. Same with Willock, he can drift into the 10, but he can also beat the man on the outside. Then you've got the rawness of Kean Ashford, Isaac Davis when he's back, Robinson's on fire, Kanga. There's a lot to be excited about, but it's going to be really fascinating to see what the manager does tactically. Guys, I'm really interested in what you would do. I'm also interested in what Erol Bulut's plan will be for Jack Clarke against Sunderland. Let me know. Join us for the preview Friday. Thanks.